A couple days ago, we got a developer update from Techland regarding the toxicity in the community and a few new glimpses at Dying Light 2. To get right to the point, I'll be taking a look at all the new footage and analyzing every aspect of it while giving my opinions throughout. If you enjoyed the video, like the video and subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this one, and thanks! The formation of clouds here really stands out as realistic and gives me vibes of Red Dead Redemption 2. With the next shot, there's a nice layer of fog in the distance. The way the fog blends with the background is very pleasing as well. A big hiccup I had for the original game's fog effects is sometimes it was way too strong and it was nearly impossible to see into the distance. The early morning fog here looks better and more realistic without it being overbearing. To me, it looks like we're running through Peacekeeper territory because of the faction color flag on the edge of the building. I usually assume white and blue represents that faction, as we've seen other flags exactly like that one in some of the concept art, and because that's the color they tend to suit up in. Each faction has their own type of look to them, and that makes sense. They have to represent each other. Here we see us following the same NPC guy as before as he very fluidly slides down a board of wood. I think this moment, along with a couple jumping shots before, shows the advancement in animation. I can't think of any times throughout Dying Light 1 where you actually get the parkour alongside an in-game character. There's also a very nice looking reflection in the water, which heavily stood out to me during my first look through the trailer, maybe even using some ray tracing. I know games like Spider-Man and Cyberpunk have gotten a good grasp on implemented reflections without using RTX, even though the difference is pretty significant, but in my eyes it isn't usually worth the loss of FPS. In the distance we see some buildings that give me heavy Old Town vibes. In this shot of Aiden sprinting with the blur effect appearing around the screen, we see the sun rising or falling in the distance, shadowing a beam of light off the trees. Dying Light 1 had some pretty good lighting effects for the time, so it's cool seeing the adjustment here, which looks pretty good. Weirdly enough, I kinda like how tall these trees are, helping the variety of nature really stand out. Farther into the distance, we see a cathedral with I assume some faction banners scoping the top and all around. Then further into this part of the teaser, we see Aiden leaping off a roof onto a building gapping a pretty far distance. We don't see him reach the building as we get blue-balled and it cuts away, but we do see people down there. One facing away from where we probably land, so we may be taking assault on whoever these guys are, maybe pulling a maneuver like we've seen a couple years back during the gameplay demo. Moving on, we see Aiden taking on a faction of sorts we haven't really seen before, or at least as far back as I can remember, so maybe they're the Untamed faction that we've heard about multiple times in interviews. They wore the same mask and very Raider-like outfits, something right out of Mad Max. Aiden also seems to be suiting a pretty cool looking outfit we haven't seen before by the look of his glove, and we also see the use of some new weapons. The surrounding landscape and buildings look like we're in a back alley of sorts, which in every angle looks very beautiful, more like disgusting and dry, but you know what I mean. Graphically, it looks great. So if you hit your defenses right, you probably will be able to do a stun animation on the enemies for a moment that gives you a pretty big advantage for you to strike back. In this shot where you're headbutted by the masked man, you can see an accessible building you can walk through and to the right a pole you can swing off of onto the upper ledge. Here we see Aiden kidnapped and tied to a chair by a member of the Renegade faction by the looks of the half gold tinted mask, which looks exactly like the one we've seen before. The room we're trapped in looks to be a garage with a big door to the left, and I assume the guy didn't like what we had to say, giving us a fist to the stomach. Next scene is another dire situation with a peacekeeper lifting his weapon to nearly bash our brains out, with that missile looking thing. But an ally comes to the rescue, raising his hand out to lift us to our feet. Seems Aiden really puts himself in a lot of shitty situations. I'm not really too sure where this is taking place, but it almost looks like a tower or cathedral of some sort with a big window in the back and the articulate engravings in the wall. There's also a UV light somewhere which reflects off the clothes and now the dead peacekeeper and the weird gear thing around this new guy's shoulder. I assume the gear is just for deflecting tough blades, but it seems like it'd be really awkward to have on your one left shoulder. I don't know, I guess I'm just nitpicking. Here we see ourselves with the two survivors, Jack and Joe, that we had an opportunity to negotiate with back in the 2019 demo, which led to two outcomes. With the look of this route, it seems we may have come pretty far, disobeying the orders of the peacekeepers and siding with the scavenging men, who are brutally beating this guy for whatever reason. Taking a look at the wrist of the character on the left, his biomarker looks completely different from the one Aiden had back then, so whether they updated it, there's multiple different types, or Aiden has a specialized one. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Here we see one of the biggest graphical upgrades with the survivor on the right, comparing now to how he looked back in the 2019 gameplay demo. It's pretty cool seeing how far the game has come from its early state, and it shows. This thing, I'm sure, was the most surprising aspect to a lot of people. Many people in the community have said the black things sticking out of it are arms and legs. While a few do look like feet, I don't really know what to think about it. I'm just more hyped for the possibilities of what this thing could do. Imagine you trying to free run and suddenly your path is stopped by a zombie crawling like a spider up a wall after you. It was terrifying enough trying to maneuver from something running after you, and now we may have to get things crawling after us as well. It very well might be the next mutation in the bolter someone in Discord pointed out. They both have those bubbles of nasty mucus covering their bodies, so it kinda makes sense, but the best theory I heard comes from a user known as Dorslob on Discord. The new type of infection we see here is a spitter type that attracts other infected to your position. The appendages sticking out of it shoot out a yellow spit which layers the ground in the distance, bringing over nearby infected like the Night Hunter's bomber spit. Let me know your thoughts about this theory. The next shot we have here takes place on the second floor of a parking garage where we see a lone zombie wandering over as we move away. The movement of the zombie looks very cool, the way it sways back and forth with a lot of realism. That's kinda all there really is to observe here. Here we see a volatile observing the area when it hears a noise and turns towards Aiden's direction. Up on the wall we see more of that yellow spit that I talked about earlier with that new type of infected. It's hard to tell where we are, but maybe a hospital because of the wheelchair and seats lined up behind the volatile. And the volatile itself is looking about the same from what we've already seen, being Dying Light 1's with a bit more muscle to it. The final shot we have here is of Aiden having a seizure reaction to the infection like how Crane often would in the first game. After the blur disappears, you can almost see some sort of scar or rash on his wrist, maybe being where he got bitten. Aiden doesn't have the biomarker on his wrist, so this may take place early in the game, or this is a pivotal moment out of context. It's hard to tell, but at least we can observe even more detail of how crisp the skin looks on Aiden's hand with all the blood and dirtiness. You can even slightly see where his veins are, unless my mind is just starting to play tricks on me at this point. And that's about all we have to look through today. In the coming weeks I expect something more from Techland, and hopefully moving forward we can get more trailers as to what to expect with this game, more sooner than later. If you want to submit a question to Techland about the game, you can do so by going to the Dying Light 2 questions tab on their Discord server. And if you want, you can join the one that I've been a part of for a little while now, known as Dying Light Global. If you enjoyed listening to what I had to say, be sure to click that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, as I always appreciate it, especially since we're so close to 1,500 subscribers. Thank you so much, and I'm just excited to see how far we go together. Thanks for watching.